y'all. This is Babs Rolls Ivy, and you're listening to 103.5 FM WNHH.
Hello and welcome to WNHH FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Toni Hart makes New Haven tick morning and night. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Welcome, Mayor Hart. It's lovely to see you on this great day.
It's a beautiful day, Paul.
Great weather. We're getting a little taste of fall before we sweat again, just to know it's going to be a nice fall.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Thanks to Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. So we have a lot to talk about. I'd love to talk with you about today, Mayor Harp. First, we're going to have to get through the big subject in the city this past week. We had that starting Tuesday night as the polls closed in the election, bodies started dropping on the New Haven Green and people getting up again, walking around like zombies and going to the hospital, coming back out. All from a bad batch of K2, a street drug that's a synthetic cannabinoid. I'm trying to say that right. Drugs that were developed actually by pharmaceutical companies, including Pfizer, to imitate the effects of marijuana on the brain for pain relief. There are all these drugs that apparently never went to market for a variety of reasons. They ended up on the street. I had this all explained to me this weekend. It's fascinating to me. The patents go online. And then whether they're Mexico or China or even sometimes here, I think Chinatown, New York, they said in one case, they take these patents for these cannabinoids, which even though it sounds like marijuana, but it's very different in the sense that it's, besides the fact it's not natural, 75 to 100% potency times the potency, and it turns people into zombies. And there's this one, and we didn't know this until later in the week, and if we'd known this earlier, we would have handled it much differently, that it was a strain of K2 called Fubinaca, developed by Pfizer, but never put to market. And it's been showing up in New York City, Bryant Park. They had episodes just like New Haven's. And where a lot of people goes on the street, a lot of people are getting it. I guess the police tell us that some of the people were giving it out to develop customers. Others were selling, but it's cheaper. It's really cheap. It's the cheap high, $2. It's not opium. And a lot of people doing the green, and they just started falling. And they were taken to the hospital, and then they were vomiting, eyes in the back of their head, passing out. And then a half hour later, they're okay. They come back to the green with still around their arms, the admission thing they put on them, and they're going to do it again. 4 out of over 100 of these episodes last week. It was only a total of 47 people. That's the latest numbers I got. Now, Mayor Hart, please tell me all the facts that got wrong there and what we should think about this.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that makes you understand how powerful drug addiction is that people would almost be technically dead, be revived, and go back and do it 2 times, sometimes 3 times.
And we learned this when we had the opium overdoses. I don't know if you were mayor yet or not. I think you were. 2015, was it? And what we found out there is that whenever the word goes out, please don't use this drug, it's killing people, because that time it did kill people, the fentanyl. Mm-hmm. That makes people go out and look for it. They say if it's this potent overdosing drug, that means I want it because it must be powerful.
No, absolutely. And we heard our police officers say that people wouldn't give their names because they wanted to get back to the green and get some more. Great high. It's really, it's amazing what it does to the brain and to the body and to judgment.
And there's so many different drugs. Like I've been getting a crash course on this. So then on the green, there are like subcultures. So I was sitting with one guy who's with the drinkers. He said, "There's the pill heads. There's the I guess the people that smoke dope." And then he's pointed to the northern part of the green. He said, "Right there is where the K2 smokers hang out." And as he said that, this unaccompanied cart rolled toward us, and someone yelled, "3 people down," and Chief Campbell ran over, and there were 3 more overdoses, and it was right in that cluster.
Yeah, I'm sure that they really understand what is going on the green, probably even more so than we do. So obviously, the people that wanted to sell that knew that's where the people would be.
Yeah. So now what happened? Obviously, New Haven got in the international limelight. We got a really bad reputation for this because, I mean, for those of us who live here know that this does go on the green. We have a way of tuning it out. But in fact, the green is safe, contrary to a letter that was written to you by the leading Republican state senator. We get tens of thousands of people on the green. While this thing was going on, it was surreal. While this was going on Wednesday, we had the farmers market and it was doing fine. I went up to the people and I said, "Hey, do you know what's going on over there?" "Oh, yeah, we heard there was something there. They were lining up for smoothies and all this kind of stuff." I mean, the green is used by everybody. It's not a dangerous place. But on the other hand, this did reveal to us that this horrible thing is going on in our midst, that many of us, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me and people like me, we walk by it, we compartmentalize it and go on about our lives. And I think last Wednesday made it hard for us to ignore anymore that this is going on.
And, you know, we've been working on trying to deal with the green and some of the negative behaviors on the green for a long period of time. And people wonder, well, why haven't you done anything? It takes a long time to get things to change. Something as simple as, and I think most people notice that there's a transfer station at the green. All the buses line up either on Temple Street or on Chapel Street, and you transfer to, I think, about 3 different lines right there on the green. And we've been trying to move the transfer stations to come up with a different plan to do that for 4 years. We got a grant. We've hired people to write the grant. It has to go through Connecticut Transit and through the Connecticut Department of Transportation. All of those minds are involved in making a final decision and coming up with a plan to move the transfer stations, which we think would be helpful in terms of moving folks away from the green, because a lot of the people are there. They come in from other towns to go to our drug treatment facilities here in town. And so if there was a transfer station that were more direct to where that drug treatment facility is, it would probably be somewhat better for all of us. You're kind of betwixt and between. The fact that everybody was on the green probably meant that we saved lives, because all of the people, by and large, I think there were a few right outside of the green, but by and large, they were all there. And we got to them within 2 minutes. We're able to get them to the hospital, and I believe that saved their lives. If they were distributed throughout the city and the same thing was happening, we know that the drug dealers will know where they are. Oftentimes we won't. We could have lost lives.
In every one of those, and I know these are serious questions, they're not simple answers, any of these proposed solutions, I was observing that when something happens like last Wednesday, everyone gets upset because it's upsetting, and they all seize on, this is the answer, that is the answer. I mean, I'm sure this happened to you 10 times more than it happened to me, where people come up to me or call me an email and said, this has to happen. So some people say the bus transfers. I say, well, we transferred a lot of the bus stop down Orange Street to Orange and Chapel, and now the 9 Square says that the junkies go there, and that's running their businesses out. Other people say, well, App Foundation has, and it's true, they haven't done a good job policing what happens around their place, and they get people from Willimantic and Waterbury as far away, because as I understand it, tell me if this is wrong, you're allowed to have a certain level of Xanax in your blood stream or in your urine and still get drugs there, which you can't do in Hartford and other places because they believe medically that's okay and humane.
I think they call it the harm reduction model.
Right.
But it's not just Xanax. I mean, I think it's any kind of illicit drug.
And then, people said, well, it's shut down Apt, and Apt said, well, we've opened something in North Haven and other places, and we're being used as a scapegoat. And yes, last week on the game was K2. It wasn't the opiates that people got Xanax for. Other people say it's just got a reputation that people come to the green, it's going to happen there. So just drive all the druggies off the green. And then the answer to that is, are you just going to say certain people aren't allowed to go on the green, or do you just regulate the behavior, which is tricky unless you have like a cop every 4 feet on the green. You're going to know when someone's slipping a bag of K2 into someone's hand,
Well, I think that one of the things we are going to do, you're going to see more police officers walking the beat, particularly around the bus area. And in the areas that we know there's drug dealing, we're going to make it uncomfortable for the dealers to deal there. But they're going to deal somewhere. I think that one of the things that we as a country and as a society have to come to grips with is that we haven't figured out addiction yet. That people are addicted. Oftentimes it's a chronic relapsing disease. And we haven't figured out how to cure it yet. And until we do, we're going to have these problems.
I mean, New Haven's not alone. I mean, obviously,
no,
the whole country has a drug crisis at the moment.
It's everywhere in the United States where
it's totally destroyed some communities along the I-91 corridor.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so yeah, I mean that's a tough one with apps. So you've discussed one of the most interesting ideas I've heard was on the show a while back. You were suggesting that, why don't we change the rules so that doctors can prescribe methadone to their own patients in their office, so you don't have these institutions like APT that we need, because doctors can't do that always. They can, I think, Suboxone, they can do some stuff but not others. That why don't we let the doctors do it in their offices so that you don't have big congregations of people coming. Other people say you need an APT because you get the services along with that there, and there's a lot of potential for doctor abuse in prescribing, just the way that the opioid crisis happened partly because of doctors being
But I think if you look at addiction specialists, these are people that have a subspecialty in treating addiction, that it could be those types of docs. And then perhaps more of those, more people in medicine would go into that field, and there would be more. I just think the way that people have to wait around outside, there aren't waiting rooms enough for all of these people. It dehumanizes people. And I can't see how that helps them.
And we had a murder, and we've had a lot of open drug dealing. They're a block from a school.
Right.
I don't think anybody likes that.
No, and I do think that there's something about it that is very dehumanizing. And everybody doesn't get the kind of treatment that the sort of behavior modification type treatment that we think ought to happen in conjunction with treatment for especially opioid addiction.
So before we go to Bob on the phone, to summarize Mayor Harp, you listen to Mayor Harp on Mayor Monday, WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. In summary, some of the actions you said that you're taking include, you're still going to keep working on bus transfers, not to have a central location on the green, try to get people delivered more toward where they're getting treatment. More cops on the green, making it uncomfortable for drug dealers. You look for docs who have subspecialties in addiction treatment, substance abuse treatment, to be able to prescribe methadone, and also being part of a national quest to try to figure out the best ways to deal with drug addiction.
The other thing that I did have a conversation with the commissioner of Demas, and about 3 years ago, she gave us 2 social workers who were supposed to be on the green. It didn't come directly to the city; it came through another organization, and those social workers got scooped up into some of the other business. It was related of that organization. We're going to get those social workers back. There's something called a recovery coach, and these are people who've been have been successful with recovery.
That's who these 2 social workers are, recovery coaches?
No, they're social workers, and so they'll be able to do some of the behavior modification groups, that sort of thing, hopefully right there on the green, and one of the churches on the green. The other thing that we might be able to get, and we're going to talk to her today about this, is the recovery coaches. These are people who've recovered. They've gone through that whole long process of recovering, and they can help coach someone who's struggling with recovery. The other thing that is really interesting, there's a psychiatrist at Yale who has done some work on street psychiatry and would like to be able to work on the green and work directly with people so that he or she, I don't know which, can prescribe Suboxone right there on the green if someone is having some difficulty. So that, as well as training our staff and others on the using Narcan, is something else that was offered to us, and the city is also going to.
What kind of staff?
Like our police, fire, maybe even the folks that work on the green, our parks department, and sometimes if you know the families of people who they have young people are members of the family that are likely to OD on opioid, they can be trained as well, so that they can actually bring them around. Well, time is of the essence with these people. They can die if they're not brought around quickly.
Thank you, Mayor Harp. Bob, you're on the air with Mayor Harp. Thank you for calling in. Did you hear what we've said so far in the subject? Bob, did we lose you, Bob? Okay, I have a feeling Bob will call back. Sorry about that. Mayor Harp, Lucas Gabrielle writes in, Mayor, is it too late to volunteer for the 2020 census in New Haven? Because I'm from West Haven, and I would like to be involved because my town isn't part of the census. That doesn't. Yeah. Organizations known as LUCA that the government mentions on his website.
There are some communities, and I don't believe ours is one, that are doing an early census just to make sure that the system works correctly. And so what I would do if I were you is just contact your state rep or your state senator. They should know what cities in Connecticut are participating in the early census.
Thank you. And Bob, I don't know what happened to you there, man. Why don't you give us a call back and we'll see what happened. Your life was put on hold last Wednesday when this all happened, right? You're the mayor of the city when this tragedy happens that everybody's looking. We don't really understand it. At first we thought it was opioids. We thought it was fentanyl in the K2 because even though people weren't responding to Narcan at the scene, at the hospital there was at least one person who responded to a higher dose of Narcan, must have had some kind of opiate in his system. So it was confusion. And this happened, I remember, in the overdoses in 2015. At first, we thought it was one drug and then another, because who would have thought that time that fentanyl would be marketed as cocaine to people? What was it like for you to deal with that crisis as it unfolded?
One of the things that I learned as it unfolded, and that I think people of New Haven really ought to sort of feel good about it, if you can feel good about anything, is that our first response system is really one of the best in the country. No one was down for any longer than 2 minutes before a firefighter, a police officer, an AMR were reviving them and getting them off to the hospital. Mm-hmm. And so all of the training that has gone on with our first responders really paid off, and I just can't thank them enough. And when you think about having to deal with over 100 people, or with over 100 incidents, that they just kept at it. They just kept saving lives, and it was amazing to me that they just didn't burn out and say, look, because they saw the people with the hospital bracelets come back, and they saw themselves reviving them a number of times, but in spite of all of that, they didn't lose heart. They didn't lose faith. They continued to save those lives. And I'm just absolutely grateful to every one of them for the outstanding work that they've done and the fact that we didn't lose anybody in New Haven.
Bracelets. That's the word I called thing. Okay. Bob, you're on with Mayor Harp.
It's a thing too, Bob.
Who's a writer here? Who pretends to be a writer? Bob, you're on with Mayor Harp? Bob. I see the clock going that he's on there. Oh. For some reason, we're not.
You can't hear him.
Let me just ask Harry.
Bob.
Hey, Harry, Bob's on, but we can't hear him. Okay, we got a technical difficulty. I'm very sorry about that, Bob. We're working on it, and we'll find out when we can have him on. So, but in terms of your personal life, were you able to conduct other city business? Were you on the phone immediately with the governor, with international media? What's it like for a mayor when an international story breaks? Well, something's happening in your city as you're being told about it.
Well, honestly, what happened was that, I can look out my window and see it. And yes, of course, the press were interested in what was going on. I spoke with the governor, and frankly, the governor reached out and called me and said whatever I needed, like he would make sure that that we got it. I then called the commissioner of the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, Commissioner Delphin Rittman, and I spoke to her and I said, look, because I became very concerned when it was, first it was just 20 some odd. And then as the day went on, then it was like 47 and then it was like 75. By the time it got into the 40s, I called her and I said, help. We need some help down here. And what about those social workers that are supposed to be on the green? What about others that are supposed to be on the green? And so she helped to make sure that we got the people that were supposed to be doing the work all along out there. And I hope that those agencies who do this work recognize how critically important it is that even when it's a slow period, that they still need to be on the green. Mm-hmm. And so, long story short, I guess there was a lot of work to be done with my staff coordinating with the state. I also asked her to ask the App Foundation folks to come out to the green. And I'm going to ask them to come out to the green often and to go into the neighborhood and not think that just because somebody walks out of their door that their treatment is over. And so she was able to get that to happen. We've gotten Cornell Scott Hill Health Center is offering to do a drop-in center somewhere close. We're going to be working with them on that.
What would that be for people who are struggling with addiction during the day, just to?
Yeah, so they can take a shower, that they can have a place where they can go and.
So you're discussing the possibility of a drop-in center,
right?
Or through Hill Health.
Go wash their clothes, whatever it is that people need to do that they're not able to do if they're just out there on the green all day.
Okay, let me ask Bob. Bob, are you on now? He called.
Yes, I am. Paul.
Hey, sorry about those technical difficulties. Thank you for
on me. I'm glad you got your phones working.
Thank you for persevering.
I had a comment in there, and here's my comment about it. These people that OD'd came back to the green again and OD'd again. So there was no services for them once they were released from the emergency room.
Actually, Bob, there were services. They said they didn't want them. What I was told was that this was a quick-hitting, quick recovery drug. And they left as soon as they could, sometimes in a half hour, against doctor's orders, and just went back to the green wanting the drugs, and there was no legal way to force them to stay in the hospital.
It's a powerful addiction, Bob. It really is. I think that for those of us who don't understand addiction, but maybe drink coffee every day and try to stop, just think of that times 100 or 1,000. Yeah. It's powerful, and it really absolutely changes their thought pattern.
And what about this meeting you're having later on today with the Trump drug czar? What is this supposed to accomplish?
Well, one of the things that we want to hear from him, because this is a national problem, it's not just New Haven's problem, is what are they doing for cities like ours? What will they do for us? What are they doing for cities like ours? And what are they doing about addiction in our country? Addiction is a powerful disease.
Hold on a second. Yeah, go ahead and finish.
No, I was just going to say that addiction is a powerful disease, and that from a national perspective, we need help. I mean, for so long, we've treated this as a crime, and we haven't recognized that, in fact, it is a disease, and we've made so little progress on it. And hopefully, we will need a way, I believe, to intersect with the criminal justice system and the treatment system. And, one of the things that our police chief said today is that we've got to catch these folks and get them treatment. One of the things that, and I know that I've been critical in the past about just the way methadone is given out, but for people that we know abuse multiple drugs and take methadone, isn't it time to give them inpatient treatment so that they can learn some behavior modification? They're away for a while and they get clean, but they also learn how to live with their disease in a way that is functional for them. consider the life these people have, always engaged in drug-seeking behavior, and we have no way to help them. And we've got to find a better way. And I'm hoping that this gentleman has some ideas about that, but that the level of importance is raised in the national discourse.
Is it true that more than half the people last week were not from New Haven?
Yes.
And is that okay?
Well, they come to New Haven for treatment because the treatment and the services are here.
And some people in the Green also don't come for treatment, but they come to hang out and do
Well,
drugs.
some of them do. They come to hang out. They come to meet with their friends that hang out. I mean, there is a social component to this as well, evidently.
And without going into
Mayor,
politics.
I heard there were some more overdoses this weekend. Are we sure we have all the 3 guys that were arrested? We're sure we have them all?
Well, you know what? There is always more where the drugs come from, and when they always say that nature abhors a vacuum. When somebody who's dealing drugs realizes that there's a vacuum here in New Haven, what are they going to do?
Let's just be clear also that there are up to 20 overdoses a day in New Haven. That's a regular thing.
Right.
They don't just all happen at one time from one drug at one place on the Green. Anyway, Bob, thanks so much for your questions, buddy. Sorry about our technical difficulties.
I did have one more question.
Okay.
And that was about the layoffs and the school layoffs.
Okay, you know what?
What's
We're going to put a hold on
from
that.
here, Mayor?
And Tony Hart, let's get back to that later in the show. Let's just finish up with what people are saying about that. Would that be okay?
All right.
Is that okay with the mayor?
It's fine with me.
All right, because the mayor's in charge. This is... All right, and she's on charge on Mayor Monday, WNHH-FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org, 103.5 FM. Molly Wheeler writes in. It's great to hear from Molly Wheeler. Thank you for making clear the Green's safety. Mayor, do any conversations you're having about regional taxing seem at all promising? So the regionalism issue comes up here.
Well, it's all well and good. So many of the folks from outside of New Haven sort of, well, see, that's New Haven. Well, it's folks from all over the state that come here, unfortunately, because we have the services. And there are more of our regional partners that are taking on some of these services, but not to the extent that New Haven has. And so you see people coming from as far away as Willimantic, as you pointed out.
It's the W's for me. It's Willimantic to the east and Waterbury to the west.
Right. And so I think it's really important that we all recognize that while we provide the services, that we need the support to provide the services. And we certainly haven't been getting it. And I don't know whether or not there would be an interest. I've and maybe I'm just a little gun shy of asking for a regional approach. It seems as if the regional approach is to say, let New Haven do it.
Well, without getting into politics, the North Haven State Senator did issue a statement attacking you personally and the city for these overdoses, saying that I guess they're not technically overdoses, saying that you let the Green deteriorate and let these people hang out there instead of someone else. And the first comment posted was from someone reporting how North Haven police officers bring homeless people to our Green and drop them off there, and that that's actually policy.
And, I think that if, in all honesty, at the state level, people would recognize the work that our major cities do on their behalf and make sure that we have the resources to do the work, it wouldn't be so, I wouldn't be so annoyed with that kind of statement. But the fact that everybody knows that if you're going to get any kind of treatment at all, you come to your major cities and especially to New Haven, whether it be mental health treatment, whether it be medical treatment, whether it be substance abuse treatment, everybody comes here for that kind of support and for social supports as well. And yet the state doesn't want to pay for it. Cities that lose their problem to us just feel better about having lost them. And we are here, and then everybody wants to turn around and say that there's something wrong with New Haven. No, there's something wrong with the state that doesn't take care of its most vulnerable citizens and doesn't recognize that all we're doing is just pushing the problem into our cities and down the road. And then when we are up at the state capitol and trying to get the resources that we need, whether it be these agencies that need these resources or our cities that need the resources to do the work that they do, that there's so much competition with cities that push these folks and these problems into our cities, and they act as if we do nothing here. And I think that's the most frustrating part of all of this. It's frustrating to me that the Republican leader of the Senate, and in the Senate it's 50-50, who has an office here, by the way, doesn't recognize how what goes on regionally actually happens in New Haven, and doesn't understand that we need those kind of resources that, frankly, his caucus denied us. And so, I was up there. I understand what happened. We were denied because smaller cities wanted more than their share, and they send us more than our share of their problems. And yes, it's frustrating. And I know, having been there, that when you have a balanced Senate, 50-50, that Republican Democrat, that the conservatives, who are the Republicans, actually get more authority around what budget is. And so, yes, I blame them and I blame him. They represent typically some of our smaller communities that send us their problems, and they don't want to take care of their own business, but then they want to criticize us for not taking care of it.
And let's take care
of some, outrageous.
Let's take care of some business of people who've written in with some comments. You're listening to Mayor Monday, WNHH-FM, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Julia Gambale Gauss, and I'm really sorry about butchering your name, but I think I got the Julia part right. The statements from Len Fasano was not helpful. Budman says, hello, Mayor. Davis Jabbar Burnell says, blame game. Miss Kiara Simone says, synthetic marijuana has become a serious public threat. It is placed with so many dangerous and lethal toxins. It's so sad that the hurting and weak resort to drugs for comfort instead of having mental health access. So many people want help and maybe setting up tents on the green and getting them proper services. People don't want help because they are still faced with day-to-day disappointments, and doing drugs is their only escape from the reality of life. And I will say, gee, that's one of the things that makes me sad about this whole episode. This is a way bigger issue than just addiction. What are we doing to help with the mental health issue that result to drug addiction or alcohol addiction? Davis Jabbar Burnell says, blame game doesn't change the fact they've been getting high on the green for how long? At now, right across the street from you. Joanne Wilcox says, thank you for your comments on inpatient treatment. Let me find that again, sorry. Inpatient treatment, good treatment, available, accessible, equitable, evidence-based is hard to find. Molly Wheeler was said, thank you. The suburbs needed pointed out that they already rely on us, that their residents are getting help from us, not them. It seems that they don't understand the relationship and dependency they're already in. And Giuliana says, can we confirm the statement about North Haven police? Any confirmation about suburbs taking people to New Haven?
Well, I know that we have heard that they are brought here, and people come here from as far away as New York City, believe it or not. Wow. And they, but I don't know about the police, but I know that our police, when they ask people where they're from all over the state.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for all your questions and comments, everybody, and thank you for listening to Dateline New Haven. Regionalism was brought up in a political context last week. Ned Lamont won the Democratic primary for governor. Tony Harp had supported him pretty early. You gave the big speech when it was announced that he won at New Haven's Victory Party on College Street Music Hall. And then Ned said something interesting in his speech, in my opinion. He talked about regionalism. He said, mayors of this state and first selectmen, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to help you keep your municipal aid. I'm going to help you drive down that property tax. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you to regionalize. Other people, Roland Lamar, at his campaign event recently talked about having 151 local boards of education with all separate superintendents and curriculum developers, et cetera, serving a population less total than the single one district in cities like New York. What do you think about Ned's offer to the mayors? Are you signing up?
Well, one of the things that I think that we could save a lot of money across all kinds of areas, particularly education. You have some small cities that have one superintendent and they have 2 or 3 schools. And so that's got to be a high cost for those towns. We were able to do it with our health districts, and it took many, many years working on that. And so I think that it can be done. And so I'm hoping that it's something that we'll be able to do. We're working now. I think that there's some money, and it's always good when you use resources, but there's some resources that are available if we find ways to work with other communities to get those, so that we have our city engineer and some of our public works folks working on some of those plans to work with other towns to get resources to do various things. And that was how we were able to get those big snow blowers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that one of the ways that you can do it is to make it in the economic interest of a community.
I think Lamont was kind of saying that. The
Yeah.
state saves money if it isn't doing educational funding for the repetitive positions. And I've heard other examples on 911 call centers. I've heard some engineering work. One thing when I've looked at this issue in the past, because it comes up every bunch of years, one part that I hadn't thought about at first is sometimes local elected officials in New Haven don't like the idea because they don't want to give up power over how they run their city to suburbs.
Well, I think that that's part of it, but I think that there are ways in which you can set a balance of power, so that if you have more residents, for example, then maybe you have more than just one vote. But we work with the SCROG, the South Central Regional Council of Governments, on transportation issues, and we've worked together, and we've done it for years, and that seems to work.
Regionalism, working together. Davis Burnell also writes, in the App Foundation said out of the reported overdoses, only 6 were their clients. And this was, again, a K2 overdose situation. Or even the word overdose apparently is being called into question, poisoning. But in other episodes, the issue we're dealing with broadly is the drug problem on the green and in the city, which also heavily involves opioids.
But no, I think that that's really an inaccurate statement.
Okay.
6 indicated that they were patients, and most of them didn't even tell us who they were, let alone whether or not they were in treatment. So there could have been more.
Molly Wheeler says, city tax, ? And I don't know if she's referring to the proposal your administration advocated at the legislature to allow for a 1% sales tax in New Haven that be collected by the state. I've seen estimates that could bring $10 million into us a year. Sometimes people have refined it to say just entertainment tax and hotel rooms. Other people have said on sales tax. Any thoughts?
I think that, look, I go all over the United States and meet with mayors, and I think I'm the only one that only has one way to raise revenue.
Oh, I think she might be talking about commuter tax. It says Madison makes its money at Yale Development and then takes that money out every day. A city would be great, meaning people who...
Well, that's something that we looked at. I think that we've looked at that over the years, and for whatever reason, in our suburban-controlled legislature, we can't get it passed.
Well, it's a little different from a city tax, because if you had to pay 20 cents more for a $20 restaurant meal, it's hard to believe that's going to have someone not come to our great restaurants.
Right.
The business community is against the commuter tax. They have it, I believe they might have it in New York, I'm not sure, because they say that's going to just have people put their job in the suburbs instead. And while I don't know that I agree with that or don't agree with it, that is a different ball of wax from $100 to 1% and $100 concert ticket or meal.
I ultimately think that we've got to come up with a fair way of finding revenue for our cities than property tax. It's very regressive, and it only taxes, at least directly, a certain set of people who own property. And so it makes it very difficult, and it drives up the cost of housing, which is another problem that our city's faced with.
And now and Molly says, thanks for the distinction. I didn't know before. If you make your money here, you should pay our city out a bit. Mayor Harp, what did you think about Ned Lamont's victory and about primary day?
I thought that it was a good day. I supported him from the beginning. I supported him every time he's run.
Well, to find
really
out
like
that
him.
Joe Ganim, who was running against him, had only 18% of the vote, kind of make, you have these elections sometimes where it turned out to know they're there. When Marcus Packer ran against you for mayor, and there were good issues raised, and it was very passionate. But in the end, the only 2 people at his victory party were 2 bloggers who post comments on the Independent and don't round up votes. There was no campaign there. Some of these elections get revealed sort of afterwards, that there's a genuine feeling of some people who want that alternative, so they'll vote for it. John DeStefano used to peg it at around 30% on city elections, up to 38%. What'd you think about that 18% vote for Mayor Ganim?
Well, I was really concerned when he said that he was going to run, that it would be a real difficult run for him. And I think that it was. I think that one of the things that he was able to do is to win to become mayor after having had after having had his brush with the law, and that it was a
diplomatic way of putting it.
it was a real opportunity for him in that position to show what he could do, and I think he really needed to do it for the full 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets a 4-year term, so he has that opportunity, and I think that if he could have done that and shown the rest of the state that as a leader that he could still deliver and get things done for his community, and I know he's done some things, but for a full 4-year term, I believe that the outcome would have been different for him.
All right. And I'll tell you what struck me. Oh, by the way, he did put out great TV commercials, so maybe Ned Lamont could borrow his get Ned in the ring. I'll tell you what struck me the most about Election Day.
What was that?
When I looked at the results. Okay, so you supported Eva Rita Zimmerman to become lieutenant governor. She came on a crusade for New Haven.
Yeah.
She did win New Haven. I would say she did well statewide, even though she got only 38% of the vote. I think that's very good for someone whom no one had known before, running as a party-endorsed candidate who also ran hard. Whether you like Susan Bysiewicz or not, she's a very hard campaigner, and she'd been around for more than 20 years, had relationships, and just built it up in the suburbs. But here's what struck me about Eva Zimmerman's vote in New Haven. We went out to Ward 15, and we saw those people, Latino in Fairhaven saying, we want Eva Zimmerman. She got only 60 votes in Ward 15. She lost the Fairhaven Ward 14. When she won wards that were Latino, almost no one voted. The reason she won New Haven, and she didn't win by a lot, won 55% of the vote, was because of Ward 25 in Westville, Ward 9 in East Rock, and the black community. So white liberals and black voters elected her. There was no Latino vote. It basically did not exist. What does that say for New Haven politics and the ability of that community? Because they get left off. The Latino community was very upset. They get left off the statewide ticket every time, and that's not good. And they feel that they need to have more of a voice in government. I know that you always pay attention to make sure they have representatives because they're part of our community. But what does it say for the community's ability to get its seat at the table and negotiate with power if they don't turn out the vote?
I think that one of the things that community leaders are going to be looking at is a strategy for getting the vote out. And in all honesty, even though the vote was what it was, I believe they still needed representation on the statewide ticket.
So you're saying that there's a reason to do it separate from the question we had when we were talking about our pundits with Norma Rodriguez-Reyes is what you said is what we all believe, that you want to have balanced tickets because you believe in diversity, you believe in communities being represented. Historically, has that ever happened without a community forcing the issue? Does it come out of the good graces of people in power? Although I guess you're in power, so you're saying yes, you will. You are people in power.
Well, I think that I do think that we're stronger as a state if everyone finds a way to have voice. And sometimes it's the opposite happens. Instead of someone getting into office because you have power and the strength of numbers, sometimes you become empowered because you have that person there, and they help to grow and develop that within the community. And so I think that it doesn't just happen one way.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. It's a study of power. It's an interesting subject. At last week when you had the press conference about the overdoses, or not overdoses, the poisonings on the green, I noticed that afterwards a lot of your officials, including people not from that press conference, were having a meeting with you in City Hall about lead paint. Is there news on the lead paint front and the city's approach to lead paint?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is that we are taking a look at our process on our procedures and protocols regarding lead paint, and we are trying to improve them and to upgrade them so that we get out there a lot quicker and deal with it in a better way than we have in the past. I mean, not to say that in a more forthright and clear way. I believe that we're working on procedures, protocols, and actions that will minimize the problems that we've had in the past.
Well, you got most of our older housing stock in New Haven. So
Yep.
and we decided we have a standard that's in line with the Centers for Disease Control, which is a lot lower. I mean, there has to be a lot less lead than the state decides is a level that triggers action. We decide we're going to take action more often, that we're going to go with the federal standard because, I mean, I think it's agreed that better standard is accurate, that kids can have lifelong poisoning at that level. So it's hard to deal with that big a stock. I think in court, there have been a bunch of court cases about this. One of the issues was computerization, that
Right.
we keep track of all our cases by hand, which kind of blew me away. I was in court that day. And
No, it's a real problem, and that's one of the things that we're working toward. We're looking at a program called Municity, and we're hoping to get people out there with their tablets to do this work. But well, the concern is making sure that we don't violate anyone's confidentiality through HIPAA and the rest of that. But we will be digitizing as much as we can of this process in the future.
so I see what you're saying, is what you've done in neighborhoods, which has been very interesting the last year, is you've created a new app so that people who have all regulators, different parts of government who deal with the property instantly go on that app and see what other visits have been held by other departments, so you know what's going on with the property. So I think you're saying here you want to do something similar with lead paint so people can get that information, but you have to be a little more careful because when someone's been poisoned, the identity of the victim needs to be kept private because it's health information.
Right, exactly.
Tricky stuff.
It's very tricky, and we are working with the health department, and we're seeing how we can bring in LCI and the fire department, and it's that whole idea that if we collaborate with one another and find ways to share information, that will be far more efficient and effective than we have been.
I guess there's something called Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, GHHI. Does that ring a bell? They've been in Baltimore, Rochester, Syracuse. They are a nonprofit that helps cities figure out how to improve dealing with lead paint, because this is something all these cities with all their housing stocks are dealing with, and that there is best practices that could be shared. Are they coming into the city?
You know, we did not discuss that at the last meeting that I attended, but what we are looking at is, are there ways in which we can use our landlord licensing program as a way to assure that when we go into license, that we take a look at whether or not it appears as if there may be a lead problem, and if there is, then we can get the health department involved
At that point.
at that point.
Now, the trick is if we just had more money, we'd have enough inspectors so that we could really inspect every part. I don't know how you do it with a small staff and you got tens of thousands of rental units.
No, it's really very difficult, and so, but we are going to be looking at, right now we inspect once every 3 years. We're going to try to make, we're going to try, our goal is at some point to inspect every year, and so we'll just have to figure out how to pay for it.
All right. And then we promised Bob that we would ask you about school layoffs. So we've had these on again, off again announcements of layoffs. School starts in a week and a half. And people got all these notices that they were being laid off. And then the Board of Ed decided we're not going to lay you off. We're going to revisit it. What's the latest on that?
Well, it depends upon the group. There will be layoffs. We will vote on layoffs tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Tuesday night, this special meeting?
We'll have a special meeting.
Wait, everything's happening tomorrow night. Okay.
And so, unfortunately, the way that we have got to deal with this, and here there really is what appears to be a structural fiscal problem in our public schools budget. And the superintendent has come up with a way to reduce what she said was a $20 million structural problem down to $14.5 million. And so you're going to see across every union that, and those that are even non-unionized, some cutbacks. And you're also going to see some employees that were 12-month employees going to 10 months.
Okay, now we've been ducking the tough question here. You ready?
What's that?
Is New Haven going to get a new flag?
It's going to get a what?
New flag.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. The alderman from Ward 1.
Haji Bechara Bolshalu. Took me a long time.
Came to me and suggested that our flag was really not an effective flag because it's too busy.
You're so diplomatic. That thing just looks like it's some kind of like key on your keyboard or something.
And so I believe that he has, he is working toward getting something passed at the Board of Alders that will have a competition for a New Haven flag.
What do you think?
I thought he made actually a very good point. That wouldn't it be nice if we had a flag and everybody knew that whatever that symbol is meant New Haven.
And he said that, you know, other cities like Chicago have updated their flags, but
Right.
it actually means something to someone and it kind of gives spirit. I felt bad for Haji because he's a young man,
Yeah.
very idealistic, very sincere. And we put an article out about this flag and he got pummeled by these not always friendly commenters on The Independent. Basically, they were mad at him because we have tax increase, we have financial challenges, we have drugs on the green. So how can you dare talk about a plan? And somebody else wrote in and said, you know, you guys are kind of spoil sports. You know, we can think of three things at once. We don't have to give up being a city that thinks about fun and inspiration and positive, that you can do that and also tackle financial challenges. Any thoughts on that subject?
Well, no, I think that whoever that positive human being was has a very good idea. You know, like I'm mayor, I just can't think about one thing at a time. All of us think about several things. You know, we have our jobs. We have to do several things on our jobs. We have our families. And, you know, most of our lives, if we think about it, are really pretty positive. Most of everything that happens in New Haven, if you really think about it, it's pretty positive.
Like you were at an Ecuadorian parade yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
It was a wonderful parade. We marched down Church Street and around and back to the Green. And it was wonderful. People love being here in America. They love celebrating their Ecuadorian roots. They love this whole idea that we share together of freedom. And it was a wonderful parade.
And we're going to start flying to Charlotte in December on Saturdays, back and forth. Connect us
Yeah.
to 150 connections from Tweed.
I think-
Why just Saturday? And I mean, it's not a big deal that Jews can't go on that day. But why only one day a week?
I think they're starting out to see what if they're whether or not people will actually take up that flight and do that one day a week. I'm hoping actually that they fly just to Pennsylvania more than 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure that when they see that people actually use that flight, that there will be more flights.
And just even though it's sad Aretha Franklin died, it's been fun to. I don't know if you've been one of these people. So many of us has been back and rediscovering.
Yes.
It's not that we forgot about Aretha Franklin. You tried to bring her to New Haven, but you got sick, so the concert never happened at the tennis center. But so many of us, and I was looking at the numbers, big swaths of the country are just watching all those old videos and listening to the old songs and hearing the tributes. Fantastic articles in the New York Times about her career. You know, what did she mean to you growing up? Were you one of those people inspired by her feminist and Black Power, not Black Power, but Black Pride?
You know what? I think that she was really a great woman artist and leader, and her music inspired women. You know, like RESPECT, and even, you know, like the song, I don't know the exact name of it, I Want to Do Right Man.
You got to do right, woman, if you want to do right, man.
Yeah,
It's a great song.
Yeah, it's a good song. And I think these are things that really made people think and impacted culture. And a lot of her songs did that. And yes, I've been listening to them over the weekend.
It's really been special to appreciate her. You know, she brought so much joy.
Yeah.
I actually always believe that, you know, it's hard to prove whether or not there's a God,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the best argument for the idea that there is a God was that you can listen to Aretha Franklin's voice and God is in that voice.
Oh, that's
I really
beautiful.
believe that. It's something you can't put in words, but it's so magical and so beautiful.
Yeah, and it touches our hearts and elevates us.
Yeah. Nice thought to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today on Mayor Monday on 103.5 FM, WNHH Radio. Thanks to Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC for providing financial support, we're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight and fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.